Kenya is not run by laws, it's run by loyalty, not to the Constitution, not to the people, but to power. In a country where handshake deals are more binding than court rulings, a dangerous pattern has emerged. One where political favors, not merit, decide destinies.
Kama ningeambiwa hii nomination ya tunakupea, ile kazi unaenda kufanya ni kufunika serikali
ndio
na kufunika ubaya ya vitu ambavyo vinafanyika. Mimi singechukua hiyo kazi.
Okay.
I have concluded that the latest appointments and reshuffles by the president has nothing to do with the service delivery, improving service delivery, but it has more to do with the political matrix, rewarding political allies, and enticing new political loyalties.
From the State House to the smallest county offices, unseen loyalties have shaped appointments, budgets, and justice. This is not a new story, but today, it's more urgent than ever. On March 9, 2018, the country paused. Kenya watched as two of its most powerful political rivals, Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga, shook hands on the steps of Harambee House. A moment of unity, or the start of quiet consolidation? There were no documents signed, no policy announced, but that simple gesture changed everything. Overnight, enemies became allies, checks became approvals, and the country's most powerful opposition figure joined hands with the state. From the outside, it looked like reconciliation, but behind the curtain, it was something else entirely. Cabinet reshuffles followed, loyalists rewarded, procurement boards reorganized. Governors shifted their allegiances not because of ideology, but because of survival. Public tenders started going to a small circle. Appointments to key positions, ambassadors, permanent secretaries, parastatal bosses, were handed out like favors. And those who questioned it? Silenced. Or worse, starved politically. In boardrooms and back channels, a new Kenya emerged. One where political proximity mattered more than public service. Where you didn't need to win, you just needed to belong. The handshake became more than a symbol. It became a quiet filter, separating the chosen from the discarded. And as always, it wasn't the elite who suffered most. It was the public. The students whose bursaries were delayed because the MP didn't toe the line. The contractor denied payment because they supported the wrong candidate. The county officer fired because they didn't clap at the rally. The cost of loyalty was now being paid, not in silence, but in service delivery. In Kenya today, politics is no longer a contest of ideas. It's a market, and everything is for sale. From campaign rallies to committee appointments, the language of loyalty is money. Votes are bought, supporters hired, speeches scripted not for conviction, but for currency. When members of parliament meet to deliberate, what's really happening is a negotiation. Party loyalty isn't anchored on policy. It's tied to brown envelopes, foreign trips, and backroom offers. A bill doesn't pass unless there's something in it for someone. An impeachment isn't tabled unless someone didn't pay. And when a scandal breaks, it's often not because someone committed a crime, but because someone refused to play along. This is the silent auction of governance. Cabinet secretaries dance around investigations. Governors move from courtrooms to campaigns with ease. And when a new administration rises, what follows isn't reform. It's a reshuffle of favors. Public resources have become tokens. Roads are awarded to brothers-in-law. Hospital tenders go to shell companies owned by proxies. Police promotions, rumored to be purchased, even government scholarships, whispered to be reserved for those who vote the right way. Corruption is no longer a deviation. It's the default. And the price is paid by the ordinary Kenyan, the boda rider fined unfairly, the student with no desk, the farmer losing produce on impassable roads. In this economy of favors, justice is delayed, equity is negotiated, and truth is the first casualty.
You know, politics in Kenya has been around people who have brands. Either your father was this or your father was that. I can tell you, my father was not even a headman in our village.
Some names in Kenya are more than names, they're keys. In this republic, not all citizens begin at zero. Some are born inside the room, while others are still queuing outside the gate. Kenya's political elite is not just elected, they're inherited. From the first president to the current alliances, power often flows through bloodlines. Fathers to sons, uncles to nephews, godfathers to protégés. The Kenyatas, the Odingas, the Mois. These are not just political names. They are dynasties. Their roots run deep into the soil of privilege, reaching as far back as independence. Even today, billion-shilling businesses are quietly linked to founding families. Land deals remain sealed under private titles. Old colonial leases were never really broken. They just changed hands. These dynasties own the media that shapes public opinion, the banks that fund campaigns, and the networks that appoint judges, police bosses, and even university chancellors. They don't need favors. They own the system that gives them. And for every young Kenyan dreaming of public service, there's an invisible ceiling. Unseen, unspoken, but very real. You need a name, a godfather, or a handshake that opens doors. Because when tenders circulate, who gets the first call? When cabinet reshuffles happen, who's on the short list? When foreign investors land, who waits at the airport? In this nation of the haves and the connected, merit is applauded, but rarely rewarded. Competence is clapped for, but usually passed over. And in the silence of the boardrooms and state lodges, decisions are made not by voters, but by legacy. It starts with a letter, a recommendation from someone above, not for merit, but for loyalty. From the smallest sub-county office to the grand corridors of Harambee House, Kenya's civil service was meant to serve the people. But instead, it serves a chain of political favors. You want to be a DO, a CDF manager, a judge, a top cop? You must be known, not by your resume, but by the people you've pleased. Today, every government job is a currency. A ministry appointment isn't a reward for expertise, it's a payoff. And once you're in, the expectations are clear. You don't run the office, you run the racket. Teachers are transferred because they refuse to attend political rallies. Chiefs are warned not to allow opposition meetings in their areas. Licensing officers take bribes, not because they want to, but because someone above them demands a cut. Judgments are negotiated. Procurement is pre-rigged. Police officers rent out their uniforms to the highest bidder. And if you resist, you're restructured, demoted, or worse, investigated. Even institutions meant to fight corruption are corruptible. Because when public service becomes a tool for political reward, the public becomes the casualty. What you see is a police officer. What you don't see is a chain of loyalty running all the way up to an MP or a PS. what you see is a KRA agent. What you don't see is a directive from someone who needs a political enemy audited. This is not inefficiency. This is design. Every bribe at the roadblock, every delayed passport, every missing drug at the hospital is not a bug in the system. It's the system working exactly as it's supposed to. And for the ordinary Kenyan, survival becomes a daily negotiation with institutions that were supposed to protect them. The toll is spiritual, economic, national. When trust in institutions dies, the handshake becomes a fist, and democracy becomes just another tender awarded to the highest bidder. In Kenya, elections are sacred, but not for the reasons you'd think. They're not a celebration of democracy. They're investments. For political elites, an election is not a contest of ideas. It's a battlefield of interests. Campaign donors aren't just supporters. They are shareholders. And once their candidate wins, they expect dividends. A tender here, a license there, a law tweaked, an opponent targeted. The voter plays the role of a spectator, often cheering for the very system that sells them out. Look closely. You'll see the invisible machinery. Businessmen bankrolling campaigns in exchange for monopoly contracts. Foreign entities offering support for favorable policy shifts. Even church leaders promised positions in parastatals. And the deeper irony? Those shouting, "Our turn to eat," often find themselves starving once the feast begins. A country with potential is reduced to a chessboard, where every 5 years, pieces are moved. But the game stays rigged. And behind it all, favors. Who campaigned for you? Who mobilized your region? Who gave you that chopper? Who kept quiet about your scandal? Who deserves to recover their investment in your presidency? Policy decisions are no longer driven by public interest, but by private "I owe us." That's why a billion-shilling health scandal is buried. That's why sugar barons crush legislation. That's why a handshake between enemies is more about protection than peace. You vote for education. You get inflated desks. You vote for jobs. You get youth funds siphoned before they reach your county. You're not just witnessing corruption. You're witnessing a system where politics itself is a transaction. A democracy mortgaged to the highest bidder. And until that chain of favors is broken, no amount of voting will bring real change. Because what we call leadership is often just loyalty returned. You don't bribe because you're greedy. You bribe because you're late, and the officer at the gate is waiting. In Kenya, corruption is no longer shocking. It's expected. From birth certificates to burial permits, the system subtly whispers, "If you want to move, grease the wheels." We've become experts in shortcuts, because the long way doesn't work. A parent fakes income documents to get bursary support. A young man gives a cop 200 shillings to avoid spending a weekend in a filthy cell. A hospital intern pays to be posted to Nairobi. No one calls it corruption anymore. It's just how things are done. The real tragedy? We didn't create this system, but we've perfected it. When politicians reward loyalty over merit, when tenders go to ghost companies, when MPs pass bills to protect themselves, ordinary Kenyans learn that fairness doesn't pay. So, they adapt, survive, and in doing so, become part of the same machine they once cursed. Even the preacher who prays for integrity on Sunday might pay for a fake KRA certificate on Monday. This is not moral failure, it is structural conditioning. A society groomed to mistrust systems and trained to beat them before they fail you. The line between right and wrong is blurred not by wickedness, but by survival. But survival has a cost. Each bribe chips away at our future. Each shortcut extends the distance to real justice. And one day, when we look back, we'll realize we weren't just victims of corruption. We were also its foot soldiers. Not because we wanted to be, but because we thought we had no choice. The system has lasted for decades because it works for those at the top, and it silences those at the bottom with just enough hope to stay quiet. We've tried to fix it. New constitutions, anti-corruption commissions, presidential promises. Yet somehow, the game remains the same. Why? Because the rules never really changed. Only the players did. Every regime since independence has vowed to end corruption, but political favors are too convenient to abandon. How do you win elections without tribal alliances? How do you hold power without rewarding loyalty? How do you stay clean in a system that punishes honesty and protects impunity? We're stuck in a political culture where merit is a threat and truth is a liability. But is change impossible? Not quite. Change will never come from above. It begins below. When voters stop selling their votes for 500 shillings. When whistleblowers are protected, not punished. When media exposes both the opposition and the government with equal courage. When we stop worshiping leaders and start holding them accountable. Kenya doesn't suffer from a lack of policies. It suffers from a lack of political will and public pressure. The cost of loyalty has been high. We've paid in lost opportunities, poor services, and stolen futures. But loyalty to truth, justice, and national interest? That might just save us. We cannot reverse history, but we can refuse to repeat it. If the invisible handshake built this mess, maybe an unshakable resolve can unbuild it.